A jewelry store in Portland, Maine was well lit, and the air was filled with a gentle murmur. The walls were adorned with gleaming cases that displayed rings, necklaces, and jewels that sparkled in the soft light of strategically placed lights. Each piece appeared to contain a narrative, a quiet elegance that was poised to enhance the life of an individual. Ruth entered the building and adjusted the strap of her faded leather purse. She was in her late 70s, and her silver curls were perfectly tucked beneath a beret. With a smile that was all too familiar, she gazed around, her dark eyes alighting on the displays that she had observed on innumerable occasions. Eric, Ruth's son, had dedicated his life to this establishment, transforming it into one of the most coveted destinations in the community. She experienced a sense of pride each time she entered the building, as she was aware that her son had constructed this triumph from the ground up. Eric was taken aback by Ruth's arrival today. It was a customary occurrence for them every few weeks. She would unexpectedly visit, bringing him lunch from his preferred cafe. She harbored a fondness for these visits, as she observed him engage with clients and observe him in his element. However, Eric was absent today. The clerk at the front desk issued a succinct message informing guests that he had departed to attend a meeting with a new supplier, and would return momentarily. Ruth did not object. She could easily lose track of time as she perused the displays, allowing her mind to meander. She felt a warmth that could only be derived from years of familiarity, as she walked down the aisles, her fingertips lightly brushing the glass cases. Her gaze was drawn to a specific pair of diamond earrings. They reminded her of a pair she had previously owned, many years ago, before the hardships and the demands of life compelled her to sell them. She briefly experienced a moment of nostalgia. Ruth was captivated by the glitter of the earrings, and leaned in to take a closer look, lost in thought. Her fingertips were resting against the glass as she made a slight movement. However, a minor error occurred. One of the earrings toppled over, and fell to the floor with a quiet clink as her fingertips brushed against the edge of the stand. Ruth's heart raced irregularly. Slowly, she bent down, exercising caution in her movements, feeling a slight sense of humiliation for causing a disturbance, despite the fact that no one appeared to have noticed. A pair of pointed heels clanked against the floor behind her as she reached out to retrieve the earring. Ruth blinking, she glanced up to see a tall, stern-faced saleswoman standing over her. The woman, who Ruth did not recognize, was likely a newcomer to the store. Ruth perceived a chill in her gaze, despite the fact that her expression was unintelligible. There was no warmth, no indication of the familiar hospitality to which she had become accustomed in this establishment that her son owned. However, Ruth dismissed the matter, endeavoring to provide an explanation as she rose to her feet. "My apologies, my dear. I simply desired a more detailed examination. This pair of earrings evokes memories of a pair that I previously owned." However, the woman did not allow her to complete the sentence. The saleswoman crossed her arms and gazed at Ruth with an expression that conveyed more than just disapproval, creating a glare that penetrated her. The saleswoman's voice was frigid and sharp, piercing the air like glass. She demanded, her eyes narrowing as she gazed at Ruth, "What do you believe you are doing?" The earring was tenderly held up by Ruth, who was taken aback. She straightened herself. She began, her voice steady but soft, "I inadvertently knocked it over. I was simply admiring it, and I—" The saleswoman interrupted, her tone tinged with contempt. "Are you admiring it? Do you mean to pocket it?" A heavy and stifling accusation lingered in the air. Her breath was trapped in her throat. "Abandoning it? That is preposterous. I have never—" However, the woman was not paying attention. Her eyes moved over Ruth, observing her weathered purse and modest coat. Her expression was tinged with cruelty. "Stores such as this are not appropriate for individuals like you," she snarled. Her words were tranquil, yet poisonous, tinged with an unspoken prejudice that Ruth perceived as a blade that penetrated her. Ruth's voice floundered as she held out the earring, her hand trembling. "I believe there has been a miscommunication." The saleswoman approached Ruth, and abruptly removed the earring from her hand with a force that caused her to startle. She snapped, "Save your excuses. I am contacting the authorities." Ruth felt her heart pounding in her chest. Her head was spinning due to the situation's utter absurdity. "Who are the police?" she begged. "That is superfluous. I did not commit any infractions." The saleswoman ignored her protestations and proceeded to dial her phone. As she conversed with the dispatcher, her voice became composed in an unsettling manner. Certainly, I require officers at Golden Grace Jewelers. We have apprehended an individual who is attempting to take a diamond earring. I have detained her, and she is still present. What is the meaning of detained? Ruth murmured to herself in disbelief. She took a step back, grasping the strap of her purse as if it could serve as a foundation in the pandemonium that was enveloping her. The subsequent events transpired in a state of confusion. Ruth was scarcely aware of the rapid, heavy steps of two police officers entering the store, or the sound of the front door swinging open. Their uniforms were crisp, and their expressions were inscrutable, and both men were tall. They proceeded directly toward the saleswoman, who promptly initiated a dramatic recollection of the events. This woman, the saleswoman declared, pointing an accusatory finger at Ruth, was caught red-handed trying to steal this earring. I was compelled to intervene before she could escape. The hands of Ruth trembled as she attempted to communicate. I was not attempting to steal anything, she stated, her voice trembling. It was an accident. I am the mother of the proprietor. Please. The officers exchanged glances, but their focus remained on the saleswoman. The gaze of one of them was harsh and impersonal, as he turned to Ruth. Ma'am, I will require you to advance. Ruth approached, her knees quivering. She pleaded, please. This is an error, but her voice was scarcely audible. The officer grabbed her arm and pulled her forcefully to the side before she could say another word. The sudden force caused her to stumble, and she winced as they twisted her wrists behind her back. What are you engaged in? Ruth's voice was filled with dread as she cried out. The sound was deafening, and the frigid metal of the handcuffs clamped around her wrists. Ruth remained in a state of disbelief, unable to move. She searched the store, hoping to find a pleasant face or someone who could provide assistance, as tears welled up in her eyes. However, no one was present. The sole individual in attendance was the saleswoman, who observed the proceedings with a triumphant grin. I did not steal anything. Ruth's voice cracked as tears began to stream down her face, and she spoke. You are committing an error. A flat, dispassionate tone was employed by one of the officers. You have the option to provide an explanation at the station. She was struck by the words with such force that they caused her to exhale without oxygen. At the station, Ruth had endured numerous obstacles throughout her lengthy existence, yet she had never been subjected to such treatment. The humiliation was intolerable. She experienced feelings of criminality, despite the fact that she had committed no offenses. The officer's grasp was firm and unyielding as they led her toward the door. Ruth's mind was in a state of tumult, with each thought becoming increasingly urgent. She was unable to comprehend how this could be occurring. Her son's store was a location that had consistently emanated a sense of security. What was the cause of its transformation into a nightmare? A voice reverberated from across the room as they approached the threshold. What is the matter? Ruth turned her head toward the source of the voice as the officers paused. Eric's expression was a combination of confusion and fury, and her pulse leaped as she observed him standing in the doorway. Eric's presence commanded attention as he strided forward, his body motionless for only a moment. His tailored suit, which is customary for meetings with suppliers, was slightly creased, as if he had hurried back. His movements were swift and deliberate as he observed the scene, his mother, who was handcuffed and weeping, the officers who were holding her arms, and the saleswoman, who was standing smugly to the side. His jaw was held firm. Eric's voice was low, and charged with barely restrained fury, as he ordered, "Remove those from her." The pharynx of one officer was cleared, and he shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, we were responding to a theft complaint." Eric repeated, each word precise and concise. "Remove them." As he approached, his attention shifted to his mother, and his dark irises began to burn. "Mom, are you feeling well?" Although his tone softened slightly, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Ruth's voice trembled as she nodded ineffectively. "I did not take any action, Eric. I have recently misplaced an ornament." Eric's demeanor was frigid as he addressed the saleswoman. "Miss Turner, could you provide an explanation as to why you believed that it was a wise decision to contact the police in relation to my mother?" Miss Turner was evidently taken aback, as she briefly hesitated. "I was unaware that she was your mother, sir." She dropped the earring, and it appeared as though she was attempting to. "You were under the impression." Eric's voice erupted slightly as he snapped.
What gave you the authority to infer that my mother, of all individuals, was a thief? I did not intend to. Miss Turner's self-assurance plummeted as she stammered. I was merely attempting to safeguard the store. Eric's laughter was abrupt and devoid of amusement. How can the store be safeguarded? From my own mother. Are you aware of the actions you have taken? You not only insulted her, but you also insulted me, this enterprise, and everything we stand for. Ruth, who was still quivering, was targeted by his gesture. Observe her. Does she resemble a criminal to you? Miss Turner labored to articulate a response, but she was unable to produce any words. Her mouth alternated between opening and closing. Eric addressed the officers, who had not yet removed their restraints. Are you truly merely standing there? He inquired. Do you possess any evidence that she was stealing, or did you rely solely on the testimony of this woman? The officers exchanged uneasy glances before one of them eventually stepped forward and removed the cuffs. Eric was immediately present by Ruth's side, tenderly massaging her wrists as soon as her hands were free. Mom, I am so sorry, he said gently. You should not have undergone that.
Ruth's voice was scarcely audible as she shook her head. I am unable to comprehend how it has progressed to this point. Eric's indignation surged once more as he addressed the room, and he straightened. He stated with firmness, his eyes fixed on Miss Turner, "This concludes immediately. You have been terminated. I do not require individuals such as yourself to represent my business." The complexion of Miss Turner revealed a pallor. "Sir, I implore you to—" I was unaware of this information. Eric's tone was frigid and final, as he interrupted, "I don't care. Exit, right now." She hurried out the door, her hands trembling as she fumbled with her belongings, avoiding everyone's gaze. The officers were the next persons to whom Eric turned. You are responsible for apologizing to my mother. She has endured sufficient humiliation for a single day." A single officer made an awkward attempt to clear his larynx. "We were adhering to the protocol as outlined in the complaint." Protocol? Eric's voice was brimming with disbelief as he responded. "Is it your custom to impose handcuffs on an elderly woman without conducting an investigation into the matter? Is that what you mean by protecting and serving?" The officers maintained their silence, their previous assurance dissipating. Eventually one of the individuals muttered, "We apologize, madam." Ruth's expression was impenetrable as she gazed at them. Before Eric directed her to a chair near the counter, she merely nodded. Eric tenderly placed his hand on her shoulder and said, "Mom, please sit down. I will ensure that all matters are addressed." Eric returned his attention to the officers as Ruth sank into the seat. "You are free to depart at this time. I will be submitting a formal complaint regarding the manner in which this matter was resolved." The officers hesitated, before nodding slightly, and proceeding to the door, leaving behind an unsettling silence. Eric kneeled beside Ruth, his tone becoming more empathetic. "Are you feeling well? Is there anything you require?" Ruth's hand was rested on his shoulder as she shook her head. "I merely desire to return home." Eric exhaled, feeling a combination of relief and lingering frustration. "We will depart in the near future, but first I will ensure that this does not occur again." The days that followed were characterized by a frenzy of legal proceedings, statements and phone calls. Eric promptly filed an official complaint against the officers, and filed charges against Miss Turner for assaulting his mother. Ruth, despite her distress, expressed her support for her son's decision. She was aware that this was not solely about her. It was also about preventing others from experiencing the same disgrace. The information disseminated rapidly. Golden Grace Jewelers, which was previously recognized for its sophisticated reputation, was now the focal point of a contentious debate regarding accountability and prejudice. Although a few customers questioned the decision to publicly dismiss Miss Turner, the majority of customers expressed their support for Eric's actions. Eric was unyielding. He stated to a local reporter, "There is no place for that type of behavior in my business, and there should be no place for it anywhere." In the interim, Miss Turner was confronted with her own realization. Video footage from the store's security cameras rendered the situation entirely clear. The recording captured her flagrant refusal to listen to Ruth's explanations, the slap, and her aggression. The officer's brutal treatment of Ruth was also disclosed, which served to intensify the outrage. Miss Turner was noticeably agitated during her court appearance. The confident, icy demeanor she had exhibited in the store was gone. She now appeared diminutive and fragile, her hands quivering as she sat at the defense table. The prosecutor meticulously organized the evidence, employing witness testimonies and video footage to establish a precise depiction of her actions. Ruth was not required to testify, as Eric had insisted. He was aware that she would find it overwhelming to relive the experience in the presence of strangers. Rather, the prosecutor consulted the video and the statements of the police officers, who acknowledged that they had acted prematurely. Their admission was a minor victory, however it did not alleviate the suffering they had inflicted. Ruth experienced an unusual combination of emotions as the trial advanced. She was appreciative of the assistance she had received from Eric and the community. However, the incident had left an indelible impression on her that no verdict could eradicate. She could still feel the sting of the strike, hear the clink of the handcuffs, and see the disapproving glares from people she did not even know every time she closed her eyes. The jury returned with a unanimous verdict of guilty on all counts, after only a few hours of deliberation. Miss Turner was found guilty of defamation and assault, and the judge imposed a sentence that included community service and mandatory sensitivity training. Eric and Ruth were surrounded by reporters outside the courthouse. Eric spoke with assurance, his words bearing the weight of an individual who was resolute in his commitment to effect change. "This is not solely about my mother's experiences," he stated. "It is about guaranteeing that no one else is subjected to this type of treatment. Discrimination is not permissible in our society, and it is incumbent upon each of us to combat it." Ruth, who stood beside him, spoke with the same level of conviction, albeit in a more subdued tone. "I have lived a long life," she stated, her voice remaining steady in spite of the throng, "and I have witnessed an excessive amount of this. However, I have faith in my son, and am confident that we can improve. We must." The crowd murmured in accord as the cameras flashed, capturing a moment that felt both personal and universal. A moment of injustice had been transformed into a call for change, as a result of Ruth's resilience and Eric's determination. The days following the verdict were marked by a sense of closure, as well as introspection. Ruth's resolve was fortified by the ordeal, which also left her with injuries. Eric, who was always the protector, ensured that his mother was enveloped in affection and support. Their lives were revivified by the frequent visits of friends and family, which brought warmth and hilarity. Additionally, there were substantial modifications to Gold and Grace Jewelers. Eric implemented new training programs for his staff that prioritized cultural sensitivity and fairness. He extended an invitation to community leaders to conduct seminars, thereby establishing his business as a space that was inclusive and respectful to all. Eric's transparency and commitment to rectifying the situation contributed to the store's restoration of its reputation. Life gradually returned to a new normal for Ruth. She resumed her weekly visits to the store, but the staff and consumers extended an even warmer welcome to her. The incident had altered her, but it had not rendered her a fractured person. If anything, it served to fortify her. Ruth gazed at Eric with pride one afternoon, as she sipped tea in her son's office. She spoke gently, "You have performed admirably. Not only in relation to the store, but also in terms of advocating for what is just." Eric's hand was resting on hers as he beamed. "I had a positive example to emulate," he stated. "You have imparted to me all of the knowledge I possess regarding resilience." The community had come together outside the store, motivated by the narrative. Prejudice and accountability discussions became increasingly prevalent, not only in Portland, but also in nearby communities. Ruth and Eric's narrative was widely disseminated, igniting discourse that extended beyond their hometown. Eric escorted Ruth to the exit as she prepared to depart the store that day. The street was illuminated by the golden radiance of the setting sun. Ruth took a moment to appreciate the view before turning to her son. "I am aware that this was a challenging endeavor," she stated, "but you transformed an abysmal situation into something significant. That is the process by which change occurs." Eric's focus was contemplative as he nodded. "And it is not yet concluded. There is still a significant amount of work to be done." Ruth's heart was flooded with a quiet sense of hope as she smiled. "One step at a time, son." The bell above the door chimed faintly as she walked away, a sound that had once been routine but now served as a reminder of progress and resilience. Ruth was aware that the world was not ideal, but she also recognized that change was feasible, one narrative, one step and one act of courage at a time.